Good evening and welcome to the WDSU News Hot Seat. It's been a long time since we've been able to say this, but tonight we have some good news to report about the education system here in New Orleans. According to the Louisiana Department of Education, the Recovery School District ranks #1 in the state when it comes to student improvement from 2008 to 2011. Also, when it comes to the schools taken over by the RSD, 80% have improved academically over the years. This year in 2011, 3 RSD schools, O'Perry Walker High, KIPP Central City Academy, and Algiers Technology Academy rank among the top 10 in the state in terms of annual progress. KIPP Central City made greater gains than any middle school in the entire state. Well, he can't take all the credit for the improvements because he's only been here on the job for about 6 months, but RSD Superintendent John White hit the ground running and doesn't appear to be slowing down. Thanks again for being here.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
What's been your major accomplishment to this point?
Well, I think, first of all, it's about some of the basic things. It's about making sure the buildings that we have are the right buildings for our kids. We started originally with a master plan that for all our facilities that didn't actually get every single child into a new and renovated building. But now we actually just launched an $800 million plan that makes sure that every single child has a new or renovated building. That's a great start for our administration, great start working with the community and with the Orleans Parish School Board, which did a great job on that as well.
Are there some schools that you changed your mind about? There were some areas that you weren't going to reopen, but you have since, had a reconsideration.
Yeah, there are a lot. It's really because we went back to the drawing board, which the community said we really want you to do. We found $242 million in additional savings and additional revenue. And we went back and we said there are schools like Douglas High School, like John McDonough High School, like Clark High School that we can renovate and make new all over again, and we're very excited about that.
And we're talking about specifically the school in the 9th Ward, where there has been a great deal of concern about the lack of a high school.
Absolutely. Talking about the school on Esplanade Avenue, there's been a lot of concern about that. We're also building a school in the 9th Ward that's got a $38 million cost attached to it, a brand new high school in the 9th Ward. Extremely exciting for that community and those kids.
What about lacking proper oversight? The RSD in the past was characterized by some critics as a seat of the pants operation. In what ways has that changed under your direction?
Well, when I talk about the basics, I mean the most important thing we need to do is make student achievement, but we've got to have equity for every single child. And that means first you got to protect students' health and safety. And so we've got to make sure that every school in our system, whether it's charter or traditional, has a monitoring process. Last week, the State Board of Education announced and passed regulations that allow us to actually monitor schools on a regular basis to make sure that truly the rules are being played by and that schools are being monitored. The board also passed regulations that allow us to run a citywide enrollment system. Parents shouldn't have to go to 15 different places to drop off an application. They should be able to go to one place and drop off an application and get the school that they want. And we're launching a citywide equal access enrollment system to make sure that every family has an equal shot at getting in the school they want, and the board just passed those regulations last week as well.
What about parents who complain that their kids have to get up really early in the morning to be bused across town to schools and pass up schools in their neighborhood nearby?
I think parents, they choose, when I talk to them, they choose schools for a wide variety of reasons. Some want the school that's across the street, some want to go across town because they want some focus that school has that their neighborhood school doesn't have. I think we can have both. I think in our enrollment system, we've got to say, look, if you're from an area, you're from the 9th Ward, you're from Treme, whatever it is, we really should give you some priority to go to those local schools. But we shouldn't make it so that no kid from outside of Treme can go to that school. If you're from uptown and you want to go to school in the 9th Ward, you should be able to do that too. But let's give priority to kids, especially in the elementary schools, who are immediately in that neighborhood. That's important.
What about schools where kids are required to take an exam before they're let in? Is that considered kosher under public education?
There's a small number of those schools. We don't have any of those in the Recovery School District, but there certainly are some. And you look at a Benjamin Franklin High School in New Orleans, which is the top-rated school in the state, and that school does have requirements for getting into that school. So you can have some of those, but the reality is that the largest number of schools have to be open enrollment schools. We have to have schools that serve all kids, that do well with all kids, but that also that make a commitment to keeping all kids for the duration. When I come in kindergarten with my child, I want to be guaranteed that child's going to be able to stay through 8th grade. 9th grade for high school, that kid should be able to graduate in 12th grade. And that's why, while the gains we've made are so tremendous, we've got to make sure that every school is pulling its weight for every child. And most of our schools, 80%, as you pointed out, have made tremendous progress. For the schools that aren't making progress, we've got to make bold change in those schools.
What about parents who are concerned that their children who might fall under the heading of special needs? weren't being treated fairly, weren't getting their due process in the education systems, public school education system. What steps have you taken to ensure that there are no disparities when it comes to special needs children?
Well, I would say that I think the educators in our system, in our city, they come to work every day focused on the needs of all kids. And special ed kids have made tremendous progress over the last 4 years. 4 years ago, 11% of kids with special needs were at grade level proficient in reading and math. Now, 36% proficient in reading and math. So that's tremendous growth, but it's not nearly good enough. And so the steps we've taken, one, this enrollment system will make sure that when I'm a parent, I sign up, doesn't matter whether it's special ed or general ed, they will be able to say, here's the school of my choice, and we, the district, will be able to say, yeah, that's where you want to go. Doesn't matter special ed or general ed, you're going there.
Some educators who are familiar with the recovery school system and the other school systems here in Orleans Parish have opined that there are about anywhere between 2,000 to 5,000 kids who are hardcore marginally literate. What steps have you taken to recognize who those students are, and what plans do you have to assist them in their areas of deficiency?
Yeah, I think there are a set of students, and I think it's a little bit lower than the number that you've suggested, but I think it is large, that really have a set of wide-ranging challenges. Their attendance is low, they've had behavioral issues, their literacy, as you point out, is extremely low. And we need to create learning environments to serve those kids well. So we've got to give schools the resources to actually keep those kids and serve them well in the school. But then when the school tries and tries and tries, and we see that we're not successful for that child, we can't just say, you're out. And I think that is not happening in many cases, but a lot of those kids are dropping out slowly out of our system. We've got to find a way to catch those kids. And that's why we've got a number of schools that are going to be starting next year that are mentoring intensive, that are socio-emotional support intensive, and that are literacy intensive, to make sure that in a small environment, especially high school kids who are way behind, are going to get intensive services particular to their needs and grant a diploma from a rigorous high school that serves their particular needs. We do need schools in this city that serve specifically our most challenged kids.
And to what extent have you identified these students? And what I mean is that there has been some criticism that perhaps these kids are falling through the cracks. That the reason the school system is doing so well is this because these kids have been X'd out, if you will.
Well, I think that last fact is not a valid statement, but it is fair to say that we do have kids who are falling through the cracks. I think it's not a valid statement because our graduation rate is going up, but those kids are counted in that graduation rate as kids who are not graduating. So the question isn't, are we making progress? We are. But the question also is, how do we find a way to reach those kids and to serve them? And so yes, when you look at the list, you can say, wait a minute, that kid is 17 years old and is a freshman. That kid is reading on a 4th grade level, even though that kid is 17 years old. That kid has had 3 behavioral discipline infractions in the last 3 months. We know who those kids are. We can identify them, our schools can identify them, and so we've got to make sure that our schools are trying and trying and trying again to make sure that we are keeping them and keeping our commitment in the school. But if they can't, we need to give them a choice other than dropping out. And that's why I say that creating a certain set of schools that have a specific focus on our hardest to reach kids is a critical piece of this entire puzzle. You can enroll kids and have an enrollment system and have the best buildings you want, but if you don't have the right school for every child, it's worth very little.
What kind of time frame, very quickly, are you talking about in establishing these special schools?
We're starting these schools for the fall of 2012. We're also starting a generation of career and technical education schools. We're building a brand new facility at Carver High School in the 9th Ward, at Booker T. Washington in Central City. We're renovating John McDonough. We're renovating Clark. We're building a school at Lawless in the 9th Ward. All these schools have the potential to be not just places that prepare kids for college, but also places that prepare kids for career in the 21st century. That's why we're going to have a career focus in all of our high schools, also to make sure that kids who have a career interest are served well in a rigorous college and career environment.
All right, we want to talk more about that when we come back, but right now it's time for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll ask the superintendent about this term, Office of Portfolio. What does that mean, and how does it apply toward improving the school system in the New Orleans area? Back in a moment.